In this video, I'm going to review with you how to define and apply material patterns and how to add highlights and shadows. And then we're going to learn how to do a bunch of really fun things that make your rendering look unique, which is to make a picture frame. I'm going to teach you how to make objects look curved. I'm going to teach you how to add a pattern with a transparent overlay, and then of course to add entourage and scale figures and a finish key. So looking at our elevation so far, you might think that a lot has already been done, but in fact, all I've done really is just created patterns and defined and applied them. So all I did was I just opened all the materials that I was going to use in this elevation, and I went to edit and define pattern. And then when I decided where I wanted to put things, all I did was select the um, plan here, pardon me, the elevation layer here, select the areas using my magic wand tool, and then I created my clipping mask here like we've done in the past, and then added the pattern here. And then once I have the pattern added, all I do is just go ahead and make sure that we have an inner shadow selected. Now, what you might notice is that there is a variation in how much shadow is applied to certain areas. There's a smaller inner shadow. For example, the size here is adjusted. It's smaller in areas in which the actual area is smaller because we don't want the shadow to take up too much of the space. But then, for example, in larger planes where color's been applied, you can see there's a little bit of a larger shadow here, a little bit of a larger shadow here. And then, for example, it's a little bit smaller in this area here where I've defined the brass of the sconce and the linen shade as well here. So let me show you a little bit more what I mean. I'm going to jump here and go ahead and show you what I mean by creating this curved object here. Now this bathtub is got a little bit of a curve to it more than, for example, of course, there's no curve at all on these wall planes. And so what I'm going to do now is teach you how to make an object that's got some curve to it look more curved. And so it's really straightforward. All I'm going to do is use my magic wand tool, create my clipping mask, and we're going to create this in a solid color. I'm going to have this tub be white like that. And then once I've got the color fill selected, then I'm going to double click and create my inner shadow here. And you can see here it's coming in and it's got a nice depth to it, but I'm actually going to increase the size even more. And that really helps it start to look more round, right? It's a lot more curved on the edges. If I want to increase the opacity and make it look darker, you can see I'm adjusting that arrow there. And that starts to give it this look of, having a complex curve where it's curving along the vertical and the horizontal planes. And so it's just a really subtle technique, but one that does add a nice effect to it. Okay, so the other thing that I'm going to teach you how to do is to add just a really basic picture frame. Now, I've created this piece of art. I just did a Google search for royalty-free images. And so if you go to Google, you can find images. Let me grab the website here. So if I go to Google Images, and let's say I want to have a Nautilus shell, then a bunch of images will come up, and I can go to Tools here and Usage Rights, and Creative Commons licenses are the ones that I want to use. And so you can see there's a bunch of images here if you need them, and you're allowed to use those. So in any case, I have a very basic kind of unique fossil shell that came up, but now I want to have a picture frame on it. And so there's a lot of different ways to do picture frames that have quite complex kind of design to them, but I want to show you just a really basic one, just a white one. So I'm going to create this marquee here, and I'm going to create a new layer. And of course, I'm going to name my layer. And now I'm going to right click and teach you this stroke command. And stroke is basically just outlining something. Once you have your stroke selected, you'll get this dialog box. And this is essentially how thick you want your stroke to be. It's in pixels, so it's very, very thin. What I'm going to do is give it the color for my stroke, and I'll go ahead and click it right here. Okay, and I want it to appear on the outside of that marquee. And so we can go ahead and for right now, we'll keep it at the normal, and we'll hit OK and see what happens. Now it looks like we've got to move that layer up so it shows up. And you can see here a very, very basic white picture frame here. Now what I need to do is go ahead and, of course, add myself some inner shadows. Whoop, that one's way too big. So we have to adjust the size of that. I'm going to make it nice and small, just so it gives a little bit of that shadow on the inside. And we can give it a little bit more of a bevel to it if we want to show some of the edge part, make it look like it's popping up against the wall. But that can get a little bit just kind of, it can look a little bit fake. So you want to just be really, really careful and create that bevel. So you can see, you can start to play with these elements and tell it exactly what angle you want to do it at. But for right now, I'm not going to bevel anything. I'm just going to leave it as that plain white picture frame. And I'm going to hit OK. Now, if I want to adjust the size, I can transform it just like anything else. Okay, adjust the size like that if I didn't get it right, exactly the first time. Then I can move it over in case I've got a little bit of that black frame showing from my original file where there was that AutoCAD line work that came in. But that's how you just do a really simple stroke around a frame. Now, you could also do it, dark brown, because remember we have rendered the floor plan of this in a previous exercise, and we know that the floor is wood. We could certainly have created a dark brown wood frame for that as well if we wanted to. But the stroke feature works really nice for creating frames, and also, even if you were just wanting to create some swatches along the side and put a little frame around that. That's the way that we do it. Okay, so the next thing I want to teach you is how to create a pattern with a transparent overlay. Now, that's going to come into play here for this shower. Now, there's some AutoCAD line work, of course, that came in. And for right now, we're going to leave it as is, but we're going to cover and kind of rework this quite a bit right now. So let me go ahead and begin by creating a new layer. And we're going to call this shower tile. And so for the shower tile, we will go ahead and I'm going to just create my new layer here and fill. And instead of color, I'm going to hit pattern. And I should have my pattern already defined here. Let's see, bricks. Do I have it? Let me go ahead and create my pattern first. Hold on. This is what I'm going to use. Okay, so now what we'll go ahead and do is fill, and we will select pattern. And we should have that marble in here. Oh, we have to scroll down. I had it in there twice. That's why I didn't see it. So we'll hit OK. Now I can adjust the size of this any size that I want to. If I want to make it a little bit larger or smaller. And let's see, I don't know why it's not letting me adjust the size. Okay, I'm going to delete that. Was it possible I was on the wrong thing? Oh, everything's freezing. Hold on one second. I'm going to pause and see what's going on. Okay, so strangely, when you create a layer and you use the pattern for the layer instead of using the clipping mask command, then it doesn't allow you the flexibility to um, change the scale of the pattern, which is kind of interesting. Um, but in any case, it's at a fine scale, and I can certainly work with that. I could also definitely create a clipping mask and go through that process if I wanted to, but for right now, I'm going to just leave it as is. What I need to do now is actually go back and I need to adjust the layer order here just a little bit so that I can show you what I'm going to do here. Okay, so right now I put the shower tile under layer number 1 so that I can start to see where the doors are. And so what I'm going to do now is create a new layer, and this is going to be called shower glass. Okay, and so for this, I'm going to create 2 doors. There's going to be one here. And I'm going to fill it with a color. And I just want something that's, I'm going to go a little bit darker than you might think. And the reason is because I'm going to end up adjusting the transparency. Okay, and so I'm going to hit opacity. I'm going to change to 50. And now we have this really beautiful shower door. And then what I'm going to do is duplicate that layer. And I can call this left panel, and I could rename the other one right panel. And so now what I'm going to do is just move it over. And I'm going to adjust the size just a little bit, even though there would be some overlap. I'm holding down my shift button so that it just adjusts in that one direction. And then the only thing that I need to do now is grab my elliptical marquee and zoom in. And because this is going to be gone once I once I get rid of the underlay here and adjust the order, I need to make sure that I have a door handle. And I'm just using my arrows to get that up and over. Okay. And then let's go ahead and I may need to create a new layer. Okay, and now it should be there once I adjust my layer order. So let's take a look. We shouldn't have that black outline here. What I'm going to do is grab my shower doors, and I'm going to bring those all the way up to the very top to see how they look. Okay, so all I need to do now is I need to make sure that that handle has a little bit of an outer glow to it so that we can see it. I'm going to change the color from my outer glow to black. Change this to normal. And then see, you can see it comes out just a little bit. Reduce the opacity so it's got some dark. Okay. See if there's anything else I can control here. Okay. And then the only thing that I need to do now is just adjust the shower door just a little bit. so that you can see a gap in the middle, as we would typically see that. Now, I can also add a frame, although this would probably be a frameless glass shower with a project like this, but I might even go a little bit farther and have some gold clips here or something if I really wanted to make it look realistic. I'm going to move them down just a little bit. Okay. And the only other thing I could do is maybe adjust the opacity just a little bit more. So you can see it. Okay, now we have a little bit of that effect there, and we could certainly add a little stroke to it here. Let's do that really fast. Let's go ahead and add gold, just a little bit. Actually, what I'm going to do instead is stroke it with just a thin layer of black. There we go. Now it just has a little bit more definition. And now they should match. Perfect. Okay, and so you can just barely see that handle, so I'll probably work a little bit more on that on my own, just so that it reads a little bit more clearly. And I could even move it over just a little bit more, and maybe just so that it matches, I'll go ahead and just create another little stroke on that one as well. Since it's thinner, I'm going to make a thinner stroke. There we go. Okay, so now you have an idea of how to create a pattern with a clear overlay or transparent overlay. And the next thing we're going to do is just add in a scale figure. And I've got several that I've been using. And so I will open up my scale figure now. I'm going to go ahead and bring in this gal, but you know what? Not that one. I want to use this one because she's not wearing high heels in her bathroom. And I'll paste her in here. I'm going to get rid of some of the excess around her and move her up just a little bit. And height-wise, she looks pretty good. I may just kind of work on her feet a little bit so that she doesn't look like she's in perspective. Move her down. I'm going to adjust her body shape just a little bit. And we can have her, we can reduce the opacity so she's really nice and light. We can also do a color overlay. If we want to match her a little bit more towards her environment, you can see here the color has been set to this, but I can double click and kind of just make make her whatever color I want. And you don't have to do this necessarily, but it can make it nice if you're doing a space like this where she's in a warm gray space, and maybe you want her a little bit more in a warm gray. And then once again, I can adjust her opacity just a little bit more. And I can move her over here, let's say. Okay, so you now at this point know so much more about how to create this elevation. So the only thing that I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause and I'm going to create the rest of the elements of my finish key. I'm going to get rid of this dimension over here that's causing just a little bit of distraction. We wouldn't necessarily put this in for a construction, or pardon me, for a presentation drawing. We can go ahead and crochet or fill in the section cuts along here. And then other than that, we just need some notes and annotations and swatches along this side. Okay, there's one more thing I want to teach you before we leave this, and it's not going to be very obvious on this plan, or pardon me, on this elevation because of our light background, but it's a skill I want you to know how to do, because in certain settings, it can really add some wow factor to your rendering. And that's, I'm going to add a little bit of a glow to these light fixtures. Now, in previous plans, I've added a glow to the window, and we haven't really done it on a wall surface like this, but it can make such a huge difference. So what I'm going to do now is just create a new layer, and I'm going to call this sconce glow. And anytime you have a perspective with a light fixture that's visible, or if you have an elevation like this or something with pendant lights, it can make such a huge difference to add a little bit of a glow to your sconces. And so it's a very simple process. All you do is just use your brush tool, make sure it's the right size, make sure that the softness is set, and we've got ourselves a real soft fade. And so all you have to do is just add a couple of little, you can see mine got dark because my swatch is black. Let me go change the swatch color. And I'm going to do a bunch of clicks so that you really see. But you can start to see some glow added to it. Now, because there's a clipping mask, we have to move this up, right? Because you're only seeing what's in front. Now watch what happens. Puff, look at all those. So we have a lot of them on there. We wouldn't need that many, but you could see where, I'll delete it again. You could see where I could bring in, and especially if the background of this was dark, this would bring in this really nice warm glow underneath the sconces. So if you render yours and you have a darker material, you'll see a really nice glow there, but we won't see it as much because of my background that I've selected. Okay, so now you have a really beautiful elevation in which you've got all of these materials rendered. You've got, transparent overlay that shows the glass doors and then what's behind them. You've got a three-dimensional object rendered here. You've got various patterns and textures defined, outer glows and inner shadows on everything. You've learned how to bring in a piece of art and put a picture frame around it. And so all you need to do now is go ahead and add a title at the bottom and a swatch key on the side, and this will be ready to go.